Sometimes the most revealing moments happen when a person is asked to talk about the past and accidentally reveals how they feel about the future. That's what happened when Kelly/Ripa sat with a milestone most hosts never reach. 25 years on the same desk. 25 years of mornings, of laughter, of live television that leaves no room for a second take. And somewhere in the middle of celebrating that number, she found herself standing shoulder to shoulder, career-wise, with Oprah Winfrey, the single name that defines longevity in daytime television. For a lot of viewers, that comparison landed harder than expected. Not because anyone was keeping score, but because it forced a question that Kelly herself seemed to be asking in real time. What does it actually mean to stay somewhere for 25 years, in an industry built on turnover, reinvention, and being replaced the moment you're no longer the newest thing? Kelly's own reaction to the milestone wasn't polished or rehearsed. Site index equals 1-1, she had just marked 25 years on the desk following the premiere of season 38, tying Oprah Winfrey for the longest-running female daytime talk show host in history/sites. And when she talked about it, the emotion wasn't grand or self-congratulatory. It was almost disbelieving. Site index equals 1-1, that's really nutty. Nutty, she said/site, and there's something disarming about a woman with 6 Emmy Awards and decades of television history reacting to her own legacy like she still can't quite believe it happened. That reaction tells you something important about who Kelly/Ripa actually is, underneath the on-air polish. People who fake humility tend to overdo it. People who genuinely feel surprised by their own success tend to sound exactly like that. A little stunned, a little amused, searching for a word like nutty, because the moment is too big for a more careful sentence. And then there's Mark. Because no conversation about this milestone stays only about Kelly for very long. Site index equals 1-1, backstage, Mark told her it didn't feel like that many seasons, to which Kelly pointed out that for him, it genuinely hasn't been/sites. It's a small exchange. It might have lasted 10 seconds. But it says something quietly profound about how these two experience time differently, even while sharing the same desk every single morning. Mark has been by Kelly's side for a couple of years now as her official co-host. But their story goes back decades further than that, all the way to 1995, when they met auditioning for the same soap opera. So when Mark jokes that the seasons don't feel like that many, he's speaking from inside a partnership that predates the show itself. He wasn't there for the early, uncertain years when Kelly was finding her footing next to a rotating cast of co-hosts. He arrived already knowing her, as a husband, as a father to their children, as someone who watched her build this career from the outside before he ever sat down next to her on camera. That's part of why their dynamic reads so differently to audiences than typical talk show chemistry. Most co-hosting relationships are built in front of the camera. Kelly&Mark's was built for years before the camera ever found them. What viewers are watching every morning isn't two colleagues learning how to work together. It's a marriage that decided to let people watch a small slice of it live 5 days a week. It's worth sitting with what this milestone actually represents, because 25 years doesn't quite capture it on its own. Kelly started as a guest host, not the frontrunner, not the obvious pick. She stepped into a hosting role she wasn't originally chasing, and somehow that accidental beginning turned into the longest run any woman has ever had in daytime talk. There's something almost cinematic about that arc. The person who wasn't supposed to be the star becoming, over 2.5 decades, one of the most trusted faces in American mornings. And that trust is really the emotional center of why this Oprah comparison matters so much to fans. Oprah didn't just host a show for 25 years, she became a cultural institution, someone millions of people let into their living rooms because her presence felt honest, even during hard conversations. When people say Kelly has now matched that number, what they're really saying is that she's earned a similar kind of trust. Not fame in the flashy sense. The quieter, harder-earned kind. The sense that an audience will keep showing up because they feel like they know you. That's why the timing of this milestone hit differently than a typical anniversary segment. Kelly has openly admitted she's thought about whether this is the moment to walk away, and in doing so, she went straight to the one person who would understand the decision better than almost anyone alive. She reportedly asked Oprah directly whether reaching this same 25-year mark should be her own signal to leave, the way it had once been Oprah's. And what she heard back wasn't encouragement dressed up as advice. It was something closer to a warning. Don't do it. Not yet. You'll regret it. There's a reason that exchange resonated so deeply with viewers who heard about it. It wasn't generic career guidance. It was one legend looking at another and recognizing something the person living inside the moment couldn't fully see for herself. That what Kelly&Mark have built together on that show isn't just a job anymore. It's a rare kind of on-screen partnership, and Oprah seemed to be telling her that walking away from it now, simply because a number lined up, would be walking away from something that still has more to give. It's easy to understand why that landed the way it did. Oprah knows exactly what it costs to end something that large. She made that choice herself at the same 25-year mark, and has spent the years since building an entirely different chapter of her career. So when she tells Kelly not to follow the same script, it isn't detached advice from a distance. It's coming from someone who has actually lived the decision Kelly is weighing, someone who knows what's gained and what's lost on either side of that choice. And maybe that's the real emotional undercurrent running through this whole milestone. It isn't really about matching a number. It's about a woman standing at a crossroads that very few people ever reach in their careers, being told by the person who defined that crossroads before her that the story isn't finished yet. Audiences pick up on that kind of thing even when it isn't spelled out directly. Viewers have spent years watching the small, unscripted moments between Kelly and Mark, the teasing, the eye rolls, the way they finish each other's sentences without seeming to notice they're doing it. Some of that comes from marriage. Some of it comes from having genuinely known each other since they were young, before either of them had any idea their lives would end up this intertwined on live television. It's part of why the show doesn't feel like a typical morning program. It feels like being invited to sit in on a relationship that happens to be televised. There's also something quietly relatable buried inside all of this, even for viewers whose lives look nothing like a television career. Most people at some point reach a version of Kelly's question. A milestone arrives, a certain number of years at a job, in a relationship, in a city, and it forces a kind of reckoning. Is this the moment to stop? Or is this actually the moment things are just getting good? Kelly's very public wrestling with that question, and the fact that she didn't pretend to have an easy answer, is probably why so many people connected with this story beyond the surface-level headline about tying a record. What makes it feel even more human is that she didn't frame the milestone around herself. When she talked about what's kept her there for 25 years, she kept circling back to the people around her, the crew members most viewers will never see, and the audience that has let her into their homes morning after morning for a quarter century. That instinct to hand the credit outward instead of inward is consistent with everything longtime fans already sensed about her. The wood is real. So is the vulnerability underneath it. So where does that leave things? Kelly hasn't announced an ending. If anything, the advice she received seems to have nudged her further from one, at least for now. But the fact that she was willing to ask the question publicly, and to let viewers hear an honest answer instead of a scripted one, says something about the kind of relationship she has with her audience. She's not performing certainty she doesn't feel. She's letting people watch her think it through, the same way she's let them watch nearly everything else for 25 years. Maybe that's ultimately why this particular milestone struck such a nerve. It wasn't just a number matching another number. It was a moment where a woman who built an entire career on being watched let people see something a little more private. Genuine uncertainty about what comes next, and genuine gratitude for the marriage and the partnership that got her here in the first place. And perhaps that's the reason so many people remain invested in Kelly and Mark, beyond the humor and the headlines. It isn't simply that they've spent decades in the public eye together. It's that audiences keep sensing something real in the way they navigate all of it. The milestones, the doubts, the quiet backstage moments nobody was supposed to hear. Moments like this one tend to stay with viewers long after the segment ends, because underneath the celebration of a record, there was something a lot more honest going on. So here's the real question worth sitting with. If you were in Kelly's position, standing at the exact milestone that once marked the end of someone else's legendary run, would you take that as your sign to leave? Or would you, like Kelly, need someone who's actually lived it to tell you the story isn't over yet? Let us know what you think in the comments, and if there's a Kelly and Mark moment that stayed with you longer than you expected, share it below. Sometimes those are the ones worth talking about the most.